Okay, I'm going to let you all in on what I did this weekend. This weekend, I had a lot of free time on my hands, so I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. I literally filmed a shit ton of WrestleMania-related videos that, literally about a month's worth of videos, basically. And you will be seeing those videos come out all over the course of the month up until WrestleMania, the first week of April. The only ones I didn't finish filming were showcasing the Immortals, but the reason I got the jump on doing those videos was because I wanted to make sure there was no interference with showcasing the Immortals. I wanted to get those done on the days that I had planned to do them, so yeah, be on the lookout for those. There's going to be a lot of them, so enjoy. But I figured we got lockdown coming up this Sunday, and I figured I should probably do something relating to lockdown. And I should also let you all know I'm filming this about an hour and a half before the old school Raw starts. So if I don't talk about it in this video, that's why. I filmed it before it happened. Hope everybody enjoyed the show, and I hope you all enjoyed Undertaker's return, which we all know is coming. And if he doesn't return tonight, I'll be sure to put something down in the description box apologizing for my gaffe. But I'm pretty sure he's coming back tonight. But anyway, I did want to do this video about lockdown, and I had, as I said, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time with all the WrestleMania videos that I'm doing, so I said, okay, I can either do a preview for Lockdown 2013, which to me is kind of boring. I mean, the card's not god-awful, but it's not spectacular either. So it's like, I don't really have a whole lot to say about that, beyond just, whatever. But I also had this other idea because apparently TNA is not doing the all-cage format this year. As of right now, they only have 3 cage matches set, and none of the other matches are going to be set to be cage matches. At least that's what the gist of what I'm hearing and what's been stated. And if this is true, good for them. I support this decision. And the main reason I support this decision is because the idea of an all-steel cage pay-per-view is absolutely stupid. It plays into all those same things that I talked about before, like a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view having 3 Hell in a Cell matches, or the WWE having 2 world titles instead of 1, or just a multitude of things that you see in modern day wrestling. Title changes happening too quick, constant rematches in quick succession, where you get 3 or 4 rematches straight 4 months in a row. At pay-per-views, it's just oversaturation, and it's a lot of those things that really makes a lot of things that they do feel a lot less special. And cage matches is something that TNA has pounded into the fucking ground with this lockdown concept. And looking over all the lockdown cards, I have them all pulled up right here, wrote them all down, just because I wanted to make this point that not only have they oversaturated the cage match with this concept, many of these cage matches, A, are not good, and B, don't warrant having a cage match. And when I was a kid, cage matches were awesome because they were rare occurrences, they were special, and they were reserved for the feuds that warranted it. Like those really hot grudge matches that needed to be settled in the most barbaric of environments. And Hell in a Cell had that same thing. Like Triple H and Undertaker last year, WrestleMania, that was perfect for Hell in a Cell. Sheamus and Randy Orton on that one pay-per-view, not so much. Ryback and Punk, yeah, I guess you could say that, Punk's this weasel heel that's finally being locked in the cage with an animal, and, how the hell is he going to get out of it? And so it worked mechanically, it worked in that aspect. I don't know how red hot the feud was, though, to actually warrant it, but whatever. But this is the point I wanted to make. Looking over all these cards, there's been 8 lockdowns to date, 8 matches on each card except for 2010, which had 9. So total, that's 65 cage matches over the course of 8 years. 65 cage matches. That is just beautiful. And when I read out some of these cage matches that occurred, it's going to sound laughable that this would be a cage match. And these matches, most of them do not warrant, based on their storylines. I'm not talking about whether or not the matches themselves turned out to be good. Some of them did. I'm looking at some of these matches, that was a good match, that was a good match, that was a good match. But it doesn't matter because it it contributes to this oversaturation of the cage match and makes it feel so much less special. And the cage match should really be like this really, really special thing. And in my opinion, Lockdown, if they want to do this pay-per-view, I would do Lethal Lockdown and maybe one other match, like a really hot grudge match that truly warrants. It doesn't even have to be the title match, just a really hot grudge match that really, really deserves to be contested inside of a steel cage. It has the storyline to really warrant it. And, well, let's begin. Let's jump right into 2005. And I can tell you right off the bat, 2005 is the worst offender of all of them. That's 8 no's right down the line. Just 8 no's. And let's talk about why they did this pay-per-view in the first place. They did it in the first place because they got a lot of buzz from that Six Sides of Steel match they did in Turning Point 2004 between AMW and Triple X. And deservedly so. Why? Because I truthfully believe it's the best match in TNA history. That's my personal favorite anyway. I think it's great. It has violence, it has tag team action, it has high-flying stunts, it has great visuals like Elix Skipper walking the cage. It's violent, high-flying tag teams. It's got everything. It's everything that's great about pro wrestling all in one match. And it's got the hot rivalry and the hot storyline that had been going on for 18 months or whatever it was to back it up. So it really fit the cage match. However, TNA got so much hype from this match that they thought, oh, well, our fans must want more cage matches, so they thought, let's do an entire card full of them, whether the story warrants it or not. And let's take a look at this card. Apollo and Sonny Siaki versus Chris Candido and Lance Hoyt. Really, that's a cage match. That's cage match worthy, really. I mean, I feel bad for Candido because this was his last match before he died, but come on. Dustin Rhodes versus Bobby Roode before anybody gave a shit about Bobby Roode, so that's a no. The escape matches, and all the escape matches are going to be no's, because let's talk about what the point of an escape match is. It's, let's take 4 to 12, or however many they do, X Division guys, let them do backflips and high spots for 10 to 15 minutes or whatever, and at the end of the match we'll have a number 1 contender or an X Division champion, as some of them have the X title on the line. Okay, fine, that's all well and good. You don't need a cage for that. You can have them just do a flippy-floppy car wreck match, and it doesn't need to be inside of a steel cage. You can do that perfectly fine inside of regular wrestling match rules, and it just doesn't need to be a cage match. They clearly don't have any story or character behind them. It's just, let's pick a contender and give the fans a bunch of backflips. And again, you don't need a cage for that. You can do that. Just let them open up the show and have them do a regular thing. Jeff Hardy versus Raven in a tables match. Fine, okay, whatever. No. Why? And this is another problem that this card had, where it's like, well, we got to make each cage match different, so we got to gimmick them. So we got to put a table match inside of a cage match. And I'm like, yes, because it's not ridiculous enough. No, of course not. AMW versus Team Canada in a strap match. Sort of, maybe. I mean, I know they'd had a lot of matches before, but I'm going to give that one a no, because it was nowhere near as hot as the Triple X match, for sure. Christopher Daniels versus Elix Skipper. Again, maybe if they'd actually built them up, the whole storyline between them being former partners, and made it like this really hot blood feud, but they didn't really do that. It was kind of the 1 month thing. It was like, oh, hey, we used to be partners, now we don't like each other. So, no, that's not a cage match. Team DDP versus Team Jarrett and Lethal Lockdown. Lethal Lockdown sucked. They didn't have the concept fully mapped out yet, which again explains, how rushed this whole concept was. They didn't have the roof on the cage. They didn't have anything to really make this stand out or anything special. So I'm going to give this one a no, because they were completely unprepared to do a War Game style match by this point. They didn't have all the kinks worked out. So that's a no. AJ Styles versus Abyss. Again, this match gets a lot of praise. It's a good match. I really liked it. But do you remember how they built that match up? Abyss had been this guy who had earned like 2 or 3 title shots, and for some bizarre reason, he never got to cash in on the title shot. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen, where it's like, you keep telling me this guy's number 1 contender, and yet he never gets his title match. What's up with that? And then all of a sudden, AJ Styles gets thrown into the mix. It's like, all right, winner gets a title shot next month. I'm like, doesn't Abyss already have like 2 or 3? I mean, how's this fair? I mean, God, the motherfucker's getting really fucked over here. But it's a good match. Doesn't deserve to be a cage match because it doesn't have the hot feud or the hot storyline. Okay, then we move into 2006. Team Japan versus Team USA as part of the World X Cup. No. Senshi, low-key, as Senshi making his return to the company to face Christopher Daniels. No. I mean, he's a mystery opponent. There is no build-up. It is what it is. Okay, this is an interesting one. Bob Armstrong versus Conan in an arm wrestling match. Now, LAX and James Gang, that feud, while the matches weren't that great, it did have a lot of intensity. And if, in an all-cage format, I thought, okay, it'll be James Gang and LAX in a bloody cage match because the feud warrants it. But no, they thought, hey, let's take Bob Armstrong and Conan and have them arm wrestle, and that'll settle the feud. And that happens a few times here in Lockdown, where the matches that deserve to be cage matches end up getting ruined because of this thing. It was like, well, we have 8 cage matches, and we have to make them different from each other. So they wind up adding some kind of stupid gimmick to the matches that deserve to be cage matches, and it ends up taking away from those matches. You'll definitely see that in 2007 when I get to it. So yeah, that's a no. Escape number 2, that's a no. Samoa Joe versus Sabu, that could have just been a hardcore match. Doesn't need a cage. Team 3D versus Team Canada. Yeah, they'd had a lot of matches and they'd been feuding since ever since Team 3D debuted with the company, like the previous October. But I don't think it was hot enough to really deserve a cage match, especially since they just made it a capture the flag match. Because kids games are totally awesome to have in wrestling matches. Christian Cage versus Abyss. This one gets a yes. They really did a fantastic job building this rivalry and doing a really good job of building animosity between the two of them for the world title. So yes, this one's a yes. The first yes out of... God, this almost looks like the expansion Tampa Bay Bucks. No. And then after God knows whatever, yes. Okay, awesome. Finally got one. And then you got Lethal Lockdown, Team Jarrett versus Team Sting. My personal favorite, Lethal Lockdown. That one's a yes. They finally worked out the kinks, gotten Lethal Lockdown to work. And from this point forward, all the Lethal Lockdowns are going to be yes, because that's their annual attraction. And they do, whether it's good or bad, the storyline they're working with, at least that's their plan to get to Lockdown and to get it to that Lethal Lockdown match. So all the Lethal Lockdowns going forward are going to be yeses. Okay, Escape number 3, no. Robert Roode versus Petey Williams, no. Yes, they were former partners, but the real feud was Robert Roode and Eric Young, and this was just a speed bump to eventually get to that. Gail Kim versus Jacqueline, good match, but no. Senshi versus Austin Aries, Austin Starr at the time, absolutely not. James Storm versus Chris Harris, yes, but again, like I talked about, because they had 8 cage matches and they had to make all of them different, the match that deserved to be a cage match was ruined. Because they had to make this a blindfold match because all the cage matches need to be different. The crowd shat on it, rightfully so, and that's what happens. So the match that truly deserved to be a cage match got fucked over because of the Lockdown concept and all of the flaws that come along with it. Christopher Daniels versus Jerry Lynn, no. Team 3D versus LAX, again, yes, it would have deserved it. They'd been feuding for months. Not the greatest feud ever, but I could buy that as a cage match and a burn-off to the feud. But, again, they had to make it different from all the other cage matches, so they did that horrible electrified cage match. And it was awful, and the crowd shat on it, as they should have. So, again, another one that deserved to be a cage match that got ruined. And then you got Lethal Lockdown in the main event, Team Angle versus Team Cage. That one's a yes. All right, then we got 2008, Escape number 4, no. Queen of the Cage, which is essentially the Knockouts version of Escape, no. BG James versus Kip James. From a storyline, I could see it. From the talents involved, no, because there's no way they could have a good cage match, so no. Cuffed in the Cage. This is probably the most ridiculous thing they've ever done at Lockdown. Let's lock 12 people inside the cage and make the point of the match handcuffing them to the walls. That's... Russo, you magnificent bastard. That's just beautiful. So that's a no. Gail Kim and ODB versus Awesome Kong and Raisha Saeed. Again, if this were Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong one-on-one and this was the burn-off to their series of matches, I'd say yes. But they felt the need to make it a tag match, so I'm going to give it a no. I don't know why it's a tag match. Should have been one-on-one, but whatever. Booker T and Sharmell versus Robert Roode and Peyton Banks. Again, this is another one. Should have been Booker and Robert Roode one-on-one. Why it wasn't, I don't know. This one kind of deserved to be a cage match, given the feud they had going. But because it's a tag match, I'm going to give it a no. Then you get Lethal Lockdown, Team Cage versus Team Taco, and then you get Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle in the main event. Both of those get yeses. Those are the, it's the Lethal Lockdown match and the main event for this rivalry that had been built up for a year and a half. So yes, Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle gets a yes, even though, again, they had to do that MMA thing with it because they had to make all the cage matches different. Seeing a pattern here. Okay, 2009, Escape number 5, no. Queen of the Cage 2, no. The Motor City Machine Guns versus LAX versus No Limit, absolutely not. Matt Morgan versus Abyss, nobody gave a shit about that feud, no. Awesome Kong versus Angelina Love versus Taylor Wilde for the Knockouts title, no. Team 3D versus Beer Money, absolutely yes. This was the best feud heading into the show for me, so this one I would give a yes to. And Lethal Lockdown, Main Event Mafia versus Frontline, I would also give that one a yes by virtue of being the Lethal Lockdown. Sting versus Mick Foley, the match wasn't that great, but the build-up was so great and so awesome, I kind of want to give that one a yes. So I'll throw that one a bone and give it a yes. So this is actually the most, 3 of them out of 8. That's actually pretty good by Lockdown standards. Okay, and moving right along to 2010, the first lockdown of the Hogan-Bischoff regime. Let's see. Rob Van Dam versus James Storm, a match to decide who gets the Lethal Lockdown man advantage. So they're having a cage match to decide who gets the advantage in the cage match. I think we're going to give that one a no. Okay. Escape number 6, no. Kevin Nash versus Eric Young. That's adorable. No. Beautiful People versus Angelina Love and Tara, no. Kazarian versus Shannon Moore versus Homicide for the X title. Any match that includes Shannon Moore should be a no, just right off the bat. That just doesn't need to be a cage match. Okay, Team 3D versus The Band. The Band. Yeah, that's a no. Safe to say. Kurt Angle versus Mr. Anderson. That's a big yes, absolutely. That was their best feud heading into the show, and it was actually, I think, probably the best match in Lockdown history. So, all right, that one's a yes. AJ Styles versus the Pope for the world title. I'm going to give that one a no, even though it's the world title match. I don't feel like they've really built up enough animosity between the two guys to really warrant it being a cage match, like this blood feud that really settles the rivalry or anything like that. So the world title match gets a no. And then you get Team Hogan versus Team Flair in Lethal Lockdown. That's, by virtue of being Lethal Lockdown, that's going to be a yes. Now we move on to 2011. Escape number 7, no. Inc. versus British Invasion versus Crimson and Scott Steiner versus Eric Young and Orlando Jordan. Just fucking no. Mickie James versus Madison Rayne. No, especially since Mickie, the match only lasted 30 seconds anyway. So what was the point of it being a cage match? Samoa Joe versus the Pope. Remember that stupid storyline? No. Matt Morgan versus Hernandez. Didn't they have like 3 or 4 cage matches, or am I imagining that? But whatever. That's a no. Jeff Jarrett versus Kurt Angle. I'm a little on the fence about that one because by this point the feud had really gotten out of hand in terms of like, okay, seriously, can we wrap this up? We get it. But I'm going to give that one a yes because they at least, built it up as being deserving of a cage match. Then you got Sting versus Rob Van Dam versus Mr. Anderson for the world title. Oh, this is after Hardy's little mishap at Victory Road, so they had no direction for the world title for like 6 or 7. Not till Bobby Roode got in the mix, actually. Whatever. So yeah, that's a no. Fortune versus Immortal in Lethal Lockdown. That's a yes by virtue of being Lethal Lockdown. And then finally we come to 2012. Team Garrett Bischoff versus Team Eric Bischoff in Lethal Lockdown. Garrett Bischoff, captain of a Lethal Lockdown team. That's cute. I should give that a no, just on principle, but it's Lethal Lockdown, so I'll give it a yes. Samoa Joe and Magnus versus the Motor City Machine Guns. No. Oh my god. Devon versus Robbie E for the television title. They're trolling with that one. That's a no. Gail Kim versus Velvet Sky. No. Crimson versus Matt Morgan. Nobody gives a shit about Crimson. No. Jeff Hardy versus Kurt Angle. I'm actually going to say no to that one because there wasn't really that much of a feud there. It was just, hey, I'm a heel, you're a face, I don't like you, let's have matches. That's not exactly cage match worthy in my mind. Then you get Eric Young and ODB versus Sarita and Rosita. Eric Young has had more cage matches, thanks to Lockdown, than I think Hulk Hogan had when in his prime, when Hogan had cage matches all the goddamn time. Holy shit! Eric Young's wrestled on almost every single card, I think. For this, Eric Young has had at least 7 cage matches. That's That's cute. Thank you, Lockdown. And then you get Bobby Roode versus James Storm for the world title. That one obviously gets a yes, given the whole history of beer money, the breakup, and just building up that title match as long as they did. That one gets a yes. So, by my count, that's 65 cage matches. 49 of them do not warrant having cage matches, assuming my math is correct. And 16 of them did. And that is roughly 25%. So out of all the cage matches, over 60 of them, only 25% of them, arguably, in my mind, would have been worthy of a cage match. And that really demonstrates the problem with the Lockdown concept. And how, and even a lot of the ones I gave yeses to were ruined by the fact trying to make them different from all the other cage matches on the show. So it really shows like what they've done to destroy the steel cage match with this concept, and it all started just because they did one really awesome one in December 2004. But it led to this. But the talk is that they're going to drop the Lockdown concept, or not the actual Lockdown pay-per-view, but they're going to drop the all cage format of the pay-per-view and not do that anymore. I applaud TNA for doing that because, as I showed right here, so many of these matches just don't need to be cage matches, and they need to try and make them feel special and really reserve it for the matches that deserve it. Now, if you look at this year's Lockdown, I mean, Wes Briscoe versus Kurt Angle, I think Kurt's got his work cut out for him in that one. Bully Ray versus Jeff Hardy, yeah, it's for the world title, and yeah, Bully's probably going to turn heel, but but, at least if they shorten it down to only 3 or 4 this year, and then next year shorten it down to 2, like Lethal Lockdown and one other big grudge match, I would applaud that. And I think they need to go back, just wrestling in general needs to scale back. Just scale back on a lot of things and go back to trying to make things feel more special. So that's all I got to say about Lockdown. Enough rambling today. Like I said, be on the lookout for my WrestleMania videos. I filmed a lot of them this weekend. I will warn you, I don't think they're that good. I think I got a little too repetitive. I got tired. My voice started to crack on me because I filmed so many. But who the fuck cares? I knocked them all out. I got very repetitive, though. I think for some reason the phrase, like, it reeks of ... like, made it into every single portion of the video. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how the fuck did it reeks of get into my common vernacular? I really need to get a goddamn thesaurus, because my old one, is lost somewhere. But, whatever. Reading's fun, kids! But yeah, that's all I got tonight. Be on the lookout for more WrestleMania videos. They're definitely on the way. And hope you all have a good one.